or in this case, Nuggery. Okay. Today we are going to be talking about chapters 17 and 18, I believe. Is that correct? What two chapters are those, you ask? What two chapters are those? Revelation at Yazuak and Thunder Roar and Lightning Crackle-lackle-lackle, I believe. Yes. Thunder Roar and Lightning Crackle. Title of this video will be First Magic and First Battle. A couple things I want to mention from these two chapters. First of all, here we are. They're finally on their journey, and they decided to head out of Theron's Ford toward Yazuak, which is a small village right on the Ninor River, just north of Daret. Okay, so he's complaining, obviously, in the beginning of the chapter, he's complaining to Brahm, "You're pushing me too hard, I got bruises all over my body." And so they have some trouble getting a fire started in the plains because it's very windy, and the brush apparently is a little bit difficult to light. So he throws his tinderbox at Brahm, and he's like, "Here, take it. I can't make it burn." And Brahm kneels down and says this curse word, Brissinger. Okay? And at this point, we don't know what that means. We don't know anything about that word. Neither does Eragon. Eragon heard him. It doesn't say that he didn't hear him, but there's no apparent understanding exactly of what that word means. But anyway, he got the fire going. Alright, so anyways, Eragon sleeps that night, and they go into a storm, and the storm just basically lifts Saphira up off the ground, and she's having a tough time controlling her, and so Brahm and Eragon have to go and basically rescue Saphira and land on her wings to try and smush them down so she doesn't fly away in the storm. And here, in that instance, we see Saphira's inexperience. She's been raised by one human. She hasn't been around any other dragons, and so it's very difficult for her to handle herself in the sky. She can fly because she has natural instinct, but as far as being able to understand how to take care of herself, no matter what the circumstances are, she has not met Glader yet. She has not been around another dragon, just Eragon. So she doesn't have that experience or that understanding. So, anyways, they didn't spar the last night there, and then they finally come upon Yazuak. So now we're in the Revelation of Yazuak, and they finally show up, and no one's there except a little fox. And so he says, "Well, maybe it's a trap," Eragon says. Well, here's what happens. They're looking through, they see a pile of dead bodies, and they see a baby stuck on a spear, which is a horrible sight, and I could never imagine seeing that in real life. So thank God it's just a book. But Eragon was subjected to that, and thus he has an instant hatred and fear of Urgals, and he hated them before, but at this point, seeing a baby on a spear like that, he's not going to let that go easily. So anyways, two Urgals pop out, and they start to fight Brahm and Eragon. Brahm, interestingly enough, does not do anything. He fights one Urgal. Later on in the book, he says, he says, well, there's only 3 people that could have bested me at the sword. But here we have an Urgal who almost pretty much bested him. Now I'm wondering, why is that? Did he do that on purpose? Was he caught by surprise? There's a lot of questions there. Okay, so Eragon is kind of, messing with this one Urgal, and then goes and runs to get the other Urgal away from Brahm, so they both are following him, and he runs down this dead-end alley. And this is where I want to pick up the story here. As he faced the Urgals, images flashed in his mind. Dead villagers piled around the spear, an innocent baby who would never grow to adulthood. At the thought of their fate, a burning, fiery power gathered from every part of his body. It was more than a desire for justice. It was his entire being rebelling against the fact of death, that he would cease to exist. The power grew stronger and stronger until he felt ready to burst from the contained force. He stood tall and straight. All of his fear was gone. He raised his bow smoothly. The Urgals laughed and lifted their shields. Eragon sighted down the shaft as he had done hundreds of times and aligned the arrowhead with his target. The energy inside him burned at an unbearable level. He had to release it, or it would consume him. A word suddenly leapt unbidden to his lips. He shot, yelling Brissinger. The arrow hissed through the air, glowed with a crackling blue light. It struck the lead Urgal in the forehead, and the air resounded with an explosion. A blue shockwave blasted out of the monster's head, killing the other Urgal instantly. It reached Eragon before he had time to react, and it passed through him without harm, dissipating in the houses. He stood panting and looked at his icy palm. The Gedwe Ignacio was glowing like white-hot metal, even as he watched it faded back to normal. Okay, so here we have our first example of magic. Our first battle and our first magic. Eragon's introduction to magic, I believe, is going to be very close and very similar to maybe his last interaction with magic against Galbatorix. In the other instances where Eragon uses magic throughout the books, he actually begins to learn magic, and he doesn't have the same experience as this. This was an experience where he says the energy inside him burned at an unbearable level, and he had to release it or it would consume him. And the other times, he dips into the energy and uses it. Now, but at this point in time, the energy almost consumed him. Instead of him tapping into it and using it, the energy seemed to come up from within him. So I think that in the end, it's going to be a similar experience, where Eragon's going to be against Galbatorix, that once again the atrocities of the entire empire are going to come into his mind, and he's going to have an experience similar to that, where he knows that he has little energy left, and he's depleted, and the belt of Baloth the Wise and the root and the sapphire and all that have been depleted, and he's exhausted. But magic, because there's something about Eragon that's special, the magic is going to come in and just almost consume him. And at that point, we're going to see something different that we haven't seen before. That is my review for those 2 chapters, and a little bit of a theory thought / this side-to-side head bob. Okay, thank you guys. We'll see you soon.